Hey everybody, and welcome to another model building workshop. I'm Mr. Allen, coming from Providence, Rhode Island on behalf of the Community Libraries of Providence, the Smith Hill location. And today I'm in my workshop and we're going to be looking at some German half-tracks. So this is the Kanonenwagen. This is the Tamiya kit. It's been out for quite a while now. Dates from either the 80s or the 90s. I know I built this back in the 90s. Shh, don't tell me how old I am. So this is the Kanonenwagen, and the full pronunciation of this vehicle is a mouthful, but we'll just call it the KFZ 251/9 OFFS D, just the D model of the half-track, and it carries a 75 millimeter KWK 37L24 cannon. Huh. Okay, so what this is, it's the Kanonenwagen. Okay, so the Type D half-track of the 251 series, basically it has a sleek, just very simple, plain on the armor on the vehicle. It's very modern looking, actually, even for the time. So it kind of simplified the shape and form of the 251 series half-tracks. The Type A, B, and C did not have such clean, smooth lines and simplified armor plating. So this was an easier vehicle to build and actually probably had better ballistic protection than the earlier versions. So what this has is a 75 millimeter cannon. So this gave the Panzer Grenadier units a little extra punch by having support cannons right there with the troops, not needing the tanks necessarily, for support, because these vehicles would be with the infantry and the Panzer Grenadiers that would be riding it back, so that they would have a little extra firepower this way. What they did at this point in the war, this is later in the war. Actually, I wonder if this gives me a date here. Yeah, these started showing up in 43. So anyway, this is taking the cannon that was originally in the Panzer IV in 1939. At the beginning of the war, this was the cannon that was in the Panzer IV, which was for infantry support. And these were also used in early Sturmgeschütz 3s as well, as these were the support cannons, infantry support guns. So now it's been relegated and it's worked its way down to half-tracks, and this makes a pretty great support weapon now, because the Panzer IVs have all been upgunned at this point to carrying large 75 millimeter anti-tank guns, more so than the infantry support weapons like this. So they've got the longer armor penetrating cannons, and now we've got these guns kind of where they need to be, really supporting the infantry where the infantry are. So that's what this is. That's a really basic history. So, but here's the model. So this is the Tamiya kit, and I've done this for the 2nd Panzer Division, as it probably would have been in France around D-Day time. You can see inside we've got a lot of added details in there. Now Dragon and some other model companies, I think, well, Dragon anyways, has done other versions of this, which probably have more detail than this older Tamiya one does, but I think this is a pretty fun model. And you can see I've kind of loaded it up with all kinds of different types of gear in there. This is a really fun build. And like I said, there's probably more detailed versions of this now. But for the time, this is a lot of fun. And it looks pretty good. Let's take a look at the instruction sheet, which surprisingly I still have. In some of these cases, I just kept some of these instruction manuals in a manila folder. And sure enough, I still have this one. And let's see if there's any history on here. Yeah, there's always some history. So this is about 10,000 units of the Type D model of the 251 half-track entered service by the end of the conflict. And some of these were made post-war. Czechoslovakia, for example, continued making these well after the war. So these are used for a lot of different purposes. You know, infantry support and infantry carrying vehicles. And they had pioneer wagons, they had ambulance versions, they had all kinds of different types of things. So, yeah, pretty much says what I just said. In a more succinct way, to be fair, but anyway. So let's take a look at the breakdown of how this was built. Yeah, in the usual Tamiya fashion. To be honest, I don't remember building this because this was quite some time ago. But the instruction sheet will give you a pretty good idea how this was to put together. And in this case, it came with a crewman that was painting a camouflage pattern on the vehicle if you wanted to do that type of an option. Interesting concept. I thought that was a fun idea. I didn't go with it because I wanted one that was well camouflaged and well lived in. So that's what I ended up going with. And for the most part, it's based on that diagram, but for some reason, it looks like don't laugh. I know you're thinking this. So yeah, it looks like I had some issues with the decals. That seems to be an ongoing problem that I've run into through the years. I don't remember that case, you know, because it's a long time ago, but obviously these aren't the decals that came with the kit. At least not all of them. Looks like some of them might be, and some of these look hodgepodge from my set of decals that I've amassed over the years. So it looks like it's been a combination. For some reason, it looks like the numbers on the side of the vehicle didn't work. So for whatever reason, we've got a different number. But anyhow, I digress. So the second vehicle we've got to look at today is this one here. Again, I built this quite some time ago, and I do remember this being a real lot of fun to build. I remember as a kid, well, maybe an early teen, building a 1/72nd scale version of this particular vehicle. So I was quite happy to try the AFV Club. And this is the light Zugkraftwagen 3T SD KFZ 11. So it's a 3-ton half-track. Now let's take a brief look at the history of this thing. This is a long history. Blah, blah, blah. This gives you so much. Basically, this is like an artillery towing vehicle, and let's see. These would have carried either the 105mm gun, a 75mm Pak 40, the quad-mounted 20mm Flak 38, a 37mm Flak 2, it says here, and even up to 88mm Pak 43s. So, yeah, these were to transport gear and tow that kind of equipment. So, all right. So this is a nice booklet form of instructions. To be fair, I haven't done a whole lot of AFV Club models. This is my first foray into building stuff from that company, and I did find it quite enjoyable. And you can see, yeah, there's quite a bit to this. You build the engine. The engine lies like in the middle, which I thought was intriguing, in a large gas tank. And of course, it has the interwoven suspension, which is very common on the German Halftracks to support the weight of what they're carrying. I noticed I got little notes I wrote in here to go back and fix things. And there's the inside driving compartment. Nice diagram how to paint that. And the interior, all the interior, and the seats. Would be nice if they labeled what some of these parts were. You know, this pieces here, I'd like to know what the function of them would be, but anyway. And in this case, I recall, I think I got an AFV Club separate track pieces for this to do. For some reason, I think I ruined the treads on this and had to get another set, which they do make. And it was one of my first uses of the gluable rubber style. So that made that an interesting experiment there to do, but that worked out great. So there's a number of different options here. I ended up going with something that I found in a book, I believe, or with a little bit of imagination. I wanted to do a different camouflage than what was offered here. But they do offer you several gray versions. You know, one from the battle in Poland, one from the 11th Panzer Division on the Eastern Front. Those are both in overall gray. There's the 24th Panzer Division on Eastern Front in 42. That would have been during the Stalingrad operations. There's one for the 3rd SS Panzer Division in Kharkov in 43. As we know, Kharkiv now, in the current conflict with Russia. But that's a winter version there. There's the 15th Panzer Division in North Africa. Of course, that's usually, you know, a lot of kits give you those options. And there's one from, well, Grossdeutschland, which is another popular subject for model builders. And that's in a overall German gray. So that may be why I decided to do something different, because these are kind of typical. Although the winter version, the 3rd SS, was intriguing, but I generally don't do SS vehicles. Sometimes I do, but I'm not a fan, really, for a number of reasons. So anyway, I ended up wanting to do a camouflaged version here, and I picked the 25th Panzer Division because I just really wanted to use that decal. Because I just thought that was a really nice looking shield that they have for the 25th Panzer Division. So I ended up going with that and got a little creative license. Wanted to try some fun with the airbrush. You can see the interior there. Decided to dust up the windshield, make it look like it's getting nice and filthy driving across the Russian steppe. This is my first, I believe, my first attempts at using like some of the pigment powders in there. So this is kind of a dirty model to touch still. But yeah, this is a lot of fun to build. I'm curious what this right here is, what that cylinder, what this indicates. If anybody knows, I wouldn't mind knowing what that is. So that's the SDK of Z11. I like the rear view mirrors they have in there, and the motors for the windshield wipers are there. So there's a lot of cool detail on this AFV Club kit. I should build more of their stuff. It's the only thing I built from them so far, and I really thought this was a great kit to work on. That was a great deal of fun. Really liked it. And of course, Tamiya kits are always great. And I certainly enjoyed this one. And as you can see, like I showed you before, I really loaded it up with all kinds of different types of equipment, because it's just screaming for that kind of attention. Anyway, so that's today's episode. Couple of cool half tracks. There's many out there, so many different types of vehicles available. I know Dragon has a huge line of half tracks. I haven't tried any of them yet, and there's lots. Tamiya's got a bunch around. Granted, they've been in production for a long time. Some of these go back to like the 70s. I believe, let's see if there's a date on this. I think this was from the 90s, but if it has a date. Oh, well. Yeah. 1990. There you go. So that's been around a while. But nice kit, just the same. Okay, so we'll see you next time on the Model Building Workshop. Keep building.